What's up, Piedmont Church? Pastor Daniel here. Welcome to Sunday Church at Home. We're so glad you're joining us this Labor Day weekend from your home. Our pastor, Dr. Ike Reichert, is going to be preaching the final message of I Heart the Church series in just a few moments. Before he comes and shares that with us, I just wanted to share a few things with you. First of all, next Sunday on September 7th, we're going to be having an amazing opportunity. We've been talking about it for quite a while. Growth Track Fast Track on September 7th. It's going to be at 12:30 in our conference center. We're going to have lunch provided for all those in attendance. We're going to have childcare for anybody who would need that. And it's going to be an amazing day as we learn about what it means to be a member here at Piedmont Church, why group life is important, and what it's all about to serve here at Piedmont Church, both in the community and here on our campus, week in and week out. We really want you to be a part of all those things. We're able to do all the things we do here at Piedmont Church because of how you give. And so for any of you that wanted to give today and maybe give for the first time, I want you to go check out piedmontchurch.tv/give or scan this QR code right here. But once again, thanks for joining us. Here comes Ike.
Well, good morning. I hope you're enjoying Church at Home on Labor Day weekend 2025. You know, today culminates our series on I Love the Church. And I certainly love the church here at Piedmont Church. And it's become a home for so many of you. And I know that there are many of you that are watching today that as of this point, you don't have a church home. I want to tell you why that's very important today. And during this series, we've taken the word church and we've made an acronym out of it. And we've talked about what the different letters could mean. For instance, the letter C in church stands for Christ established the church. We know that the church is not just a good idea, it's a God idea, and it's something that Jesus was willing to die for. Then we talked in the H that heaven is enlarged by the church, and that's an exciting thing to think about. That as we get together as a church, it's all about changed lives. That's why we exist, to be able to help change people's lives and to be able to make an impact and to introduce them to their Savior, Jesus Christ. And then the U was about unity within the church and why it is so important to be able to have unity, because unity will allow you to be able to enlarge that church. I can tell you this, the more a church has unity, the greater that church is going to grow and the greater the health within that church is going to be. So unity is something that is vitally important. And then the letter R is all about relationships, because relationships, well, they're a key, because God never meant for us to go through this life alone. And because of that, He never meant for us to be on a solo journey. He established the church for us, and Christ, as I mentioned, came and died for that church. So relationships are things that guide us. And then the C in church, we talked about, and this is so especially true of Piedmont Church, that the C is that the community is enriched by the church. There is something about it that when you and I get together as a church, we can make such a great impact in our community, because the Bible tells us to go out and to be the salt and to be the light. And always remember, you've got to be something, salt, before you can do something, and that's to be able to give light. And then today we're at that final H, and I want to talk about that church is a home for people. And I think it's so important that we understand that today. And the way that we do church here at Piedmont Church, you know, our mission statement really says it all, that we exist to be able to show God's love in such a way that people would exchange ordinary living for an extraordinary life through the transforming power of Jesus Christ. And you know, several weeks ago, I got to help baptize that day along with several other staff. And it was a meaningful day. There were 18 people that came through the waters. But the thing that was in common was that everyone that was being baptized had come to know Christ. And they were wearing a shirt that said, The Great Exchange. And that's what we believe that baptism is all about. It's the outward sign of the inward change that Jesus Christ has made in your life. So when you think about it, the core is that you know Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior, that you follow Him in believer's baptism, And then I believe your next step in spiritual maturity is that you find a church home. You find a place, you find a church that is going to be like home to you, because that home is there to encourage you. So today, as you think about the church being your home, I want you to think about all the different ways that Piedmont Church is there to be able to be an encouragement to you and to your life. So the church then is God's ordained, instrument that He's put into this world. He ordained two institutions. He ordained the institution of marriage, and He ordained the institution of the church. And the church is there to help bring healing and hope to a very hurting world. Years ago, I brought two older pastors on my staff when I was a brand new pastor. And one of them was named Dr. Harry Smith. And he just understood people, and he knew churches. And I think he was in his 80s when I brought him on my staff. And I was talking to him about ministry one day. And he told me, he said, Ike, if you will preach to hurting people, you will never lack for an audience. You'll never lack for a congregation, because there are so many people that are hurting. And when you're hurting, is there any place in the world that you want to be more than to be at home? And I think in a spiritual sense, the same thing is true about our life. When life begins to unravel on you, where do hurting people go? When you find out that you've got cancer, when you find out that your marriage is breaking apart, when addiction has you in chains, and when anxiety just seems to be screaming all through your body, where is it that you're going to turn to? Where is it that you're going to go? Because some people, quite honestly, they turn to isolation. Some people turn to alcohol. Some people turn to pornography. Some people turn to just whatever can numb their mind and to get them through the different stresses and pressures that they're going through in life. But I'm telling you, God Himself designed a better place. He designed a place that's a holy place. He designed a place that should be a healing place, and that place is the church, the place that you call home. And I just want you to know today that you need a church home. And I know that everybody is watching today from home, that this is a message that we call, a home message, because we're not meeting in person today. But I want you to know how important it is that you do meet in person, that you have that opportunity. And so some of you, since the pandemic, you really haven't gone back physically into a church. And I'm so thankful that you watch online, and I'm certainly not here to make you feel guilty in any way. But I do want you to know how important it is that you physically are there and you bring yourself together with a group of other believers. Now, I know that some of you have not physically gone to church because you've been hurt by the church. And let's be honest, sometimes the meanest people on God's green earth can be the people in the church. And that is so wrong on so many different levels. The church is not a place that's to be a fortress for people that are just flawless and they feel like that they've got it all together. He designed it, you've heard it said, to be a hospital for the hurting. It's not a shrine for saints, but it is a place for us to be able to come and to be able to heal. And so that's the heart of today's message that I want to share with you, is that last H there in church is about home, and it's about having a home for people that are hurting. I mean, think about it. When Jesus talked about His own ministry, He did something that He would often do. He would go to the Old Testament and He would say, now, here's a prophecy concerning me that's being fulfilled in my lifetime. And so one of those is in Isaiah chapter 61, and it's in verses 1 through 3. And here's what Jesus said. He said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me," now listen, "to bring good news to the afflicted." You know, that's what we call the Bible. We call it the gospel. The gospel means good news. And Jesus is saying the Lord has anointed him. He has set him aside for a specific purpose. And that purpose is to bring good news to the afflicted. You know, the good news of salvation, that anyone can be saved. Anyone who calls upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. And so that's good news to us, that there's good news that when we're separated from God by our sin, and that there is a way to be able to remediate that. And that's through what Jesus Christ did on the cross for us. And then, of course, God's stamp of approval was the resurrection. So when Jesus is taking an Old Testament prophecy to say, this is talking about me, I want you to listen to the core of what he was saying about himself. He was saying, the Spirit of God is upon me because the Lord has anointed me, set aside this purpose for me to bring good news to people that are afflicted. You know, to people that are afflicted by their conscience because they just feel condemned all the time. They feel guilty all the time. They feel shame all the time. That's an affliction in our life. Being spiritually separated from God is an affliction in our life. But Jesus is saying that God has sent him and anointed him to bring good news to all of those people that are experiencing those things. And then he says he sent me to bind up the brokenhearted. Boy, oh boy, do we have a lot of brokenhearted people in the world today. Some of you are going through the breakup of a marriage. Some of you are going through the loss of a dream. Some of you right now, you know, are struggling when it comes to your work life. There's all kinds of articles that are out right now for a lot of very talented, creative people who've been in the movie industry in Georgia, and now that's down 30% in 1 year. And all of a sudden, those people are trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do in my life? Where am I going to live? What's going on? So that's the type of thing where God says through Jesus Christ, I want to bind up your brokenheartedness. You know, when your dreams fall apart, when things aren't working the way that you thought that they were going to work. And he says to proclaim liberty to captives. That's people that are captive to all those negative things that want to hold you back and want to hold you down and to bind you. Because the devil comes to kill, to steal, and destroy. And so Jesus is saying, I'm going to proclaim liberty to people that feel like they've been captives to these things. And I'm going to bring freedom to the prisoner. I'm going to proclaim to you, this is verse 2, the favorable year of the Lord and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort everyone who mourns, and to grant to those who mourn in Zion, giving them a garland of flowers instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, and the mantle of praise instead of a spirit of fainting. In other words, being so overwrought by anxiety that you literally just faint. And then listen to what he says. I'm going to do all of these things. I'm going to give you a garland instead of ashes. I'm going to give you the oil of gladness instead of mourning. I'm going to give you a mantle of praise instead of this fainting and being overwhelmed in my life, so that you will be called oaks of righteousness. Isn't that beautiful to think that that's the way that God looks at us, that we can be called oaks of righteousness? The planting of the Lord, may he be glorified. So when you look at the entire mission of why Jesus, came as the Messiah, and he's standing in the synagogue and he's reading these words, he's saying something very radical. He's saying, today, as I stand here and speak, the scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing. And Jesus, in this compact set of verses, he declares his purpose, because his first sermon wasn't about power, it was about people, because it's always about people. And one of the core values of this church is that people matter to us at Piedmont Church because people matter to God. That's why we want you to have a church home. That's why we want you to have a place where you know that there's going to be people there that are going to help to look after you and be able to walk with you in life, to be able to be companions in a spiritual nature with the walk that every one of us are on. So his first sermon doesn't have anything to do with power. It was about people. But I want you to think about the people he talked about. He talked about the poor. He talked about the brokenhearted. He talked about people that were captives. He talked about people that were mourning. And he said, I didn't come to condemn you. I came to comfort you, not to shame them, but to be able to save them. You know, I heard Bob Goff, who wrote the book Love Does, and that's, of course, why we do Love Does here in the life of Piedmont Church, a way to be able to reach outside the walls of our church and to be able to touch our community with compassion. But I heard Bob Goff say the most interesting thing. He said Jesus spent his ministry running to the people that you and I run away from. You know, the ones that we avoid their gaze when they've got their cardboard sign. The one that doesn't look like us, maybe doesn't smell like us, and we get overwhelmed by those people. The interesting thing is that Jesus said, those are the very people that I've come to be able to impact. So I want you to understand the church here at Piedmont is not a stage for a bunch of saints to stand on, but it's really a sanctuary for sinners. Now, the other thing about the church is that it's a spiritual home. So every Sunday, we know that there are people walking through our doors that are battling depression. Some of them are going through a divorce. Some of them are going through a disease that's racking their bodies. And there's other people that are going through doubts. They're just not sure where they stand. And let me tell you, when they walk into that building, they don't need a performance. What they need is a presence. And for us to move into the presence of God, they don't need a show. What they need is they need a shepherd. And in Psalms 147:3, the psalmist said, He heals the brokenhearted and He binds up their wounds. And that's what I want you to understand about the church, that we're a healing place, that we're a spiritual home where the hurting people in this world can find help and hope. And that's why we joke around and say, well, we want to be the Ken Nugent of churches. And for those of you who do not live in the Georgia area, Ken Nugent is a personal injury attorney. And he has a saying, one call, that's all. That's what we want to be as a church. We want to be the place that if our community is hurting, that if something takes place here, that people know that you can come to this church. You know, even as I tape this today, I just finished attending a luncheon that we did where we raise money through an Easter egg hunt that we do called the Northeast Cobb Easter Egg Drop. And so we raise all of this money, tens of thousands of dollars. And you know what we do? We give it all away to our community. So I spent the afternoon being with educators, the superintendents of our school system, people that make such a difference in the atmosphere and the culture of the community in which we're here to minister. And we're able to do that because of the generosity of this church. You see, when you're in a healing place and you're in a spiritual place, there's a sense of generosity that builds up and makes a difference. They say that in the early church, that one of the first things that began to set them apart from all the other religious institutions was how kind they were and the way that they would reach out to their community and make a difference. And that's what I think the church should do. It ought to be offering the hope that we feel that's in Christ, because for us, hope is in a person. Colossians 1:27 says, Christ in you, that's the hope of glory, that Jesus Christ working in you. So when you come to church here, we don't want to offer some type of false optimism or, have some type of a Pollyanna attitude about things. But what we do want to offer is real hope. And so we offer people Jesus Christ because He's the one that's the healer. He's the one that's the helper. He is the one that is the hope of the world. And our hope is anchored in eternity because we know that this world is passing away. We know that right now there's peace talks that are going on because they're trying to settle a war between Russia and the Ukraine. But we also know that there's the ever-present thought of all the nuclear weapons that have been stockpiled. And it's not whether or not you could blow up this world, it's how many times over this world could be blown up. And so we live in a world that is very uncertain. So what do you and I need in uncertain times when we feel like we're on stormy seas? Well, Hebrews chapter 6, verse 19 says, this hope that you and I have, it's an anchor for our soul. And it's both sure and it is steadfast. So let me just tell you very clearly today, my hope is not in a political party. You can rest assured, and I don't care whether you're talking about Republican or whether you're talking about Democratic or whether you're talking about Libertarian or whether you're talking about national Christianity, a movement that is there of nationalism. That's not where my hope is. My hope's not in a perfect economy and that my 403B is doing well or my 401k is doing well. It's not even in having a problem-free life. Because you know what? Just like you, I have problems in my life. My wife struggles with a lot of health issues. I've had a daughter that struggled with health issues. And we all have things that we struggle with. And we can't just sit back and think, well, when all of our problems are solved, then we can have hope. No, you see, our good news is that our hope is in Christ, the one who was born of a virgin, the one who lived a perfect life, the one who died an atoning death, the one who was gloriously resurrected. Not only that, but the one that's going to be returning for each and every one of us. And so when people encounter the church, they ought to be encountering that type of hope. They ought to be entering into a community of people who look at other people coming in and just say, you're not alone, you're not forgotten, you're not invisible, and listen carefully to me, you're not too far gone, that God doesn't have a plan and a purpose for your life. So you and I, we're called to carry hope in this church that we call our church home. And the church is the hands and the feet of Jesus. And 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 27 reminds us, now you, all of us, you're Christ's body, and individually then you are members of it. So it ought to impact the way that we love people. It ought to impact the way that we listen to people, the way that we lift other people, and the way that we walk into someone's life. And we call that our SALT principle here. And SALT is just that acronym for us that we want to see people the way that Jesus sees people. We want to accept people the way that Jesus accepts people. We want to love people the way that Jesus loved people. And we want to touch people the way that Jesus Christ touched people. And Galatians 6:2 says, bear one another's burdens and thereby fulfill the law of Christ. So we don't just preach hope, we practice hope. And we practice hope in the way that we hug and we love on people and we care about people and the way that we support other institutions. Matt, Pima, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of your generosity. Today I found out in the luncheon, now we're on room number 49 as a sensory perception room. That's about $2,500 to $3,000 every time that we do that. And you know what? We never have to go out and try to find the money. The money ends up finding us. It's the most amazing thing. because those sensory perception rooms that help children with autism, what a difference that's making in the lives of those families. And to know now that we have exceptional futures that meets here all during the week at Piedmont Church for adults that have some learning disabilities. And to know that rather than this church just sitting empty, they're sitting here and they're meeting and they're giving families hope. You see, we don't just preach it, we practice it. And you know another way that you practice it is you do things. Now, I'm the president and CEO of an organization called MUS Ministries. And for those of you watching that do not know MUS, we are a human service organization that's been around for 54 years, and we're the 27th largest nonprofit in the Atlanta area. And we're there to be able to help people in poverty. But we could have the greatest mission in the world to be able to serve our neighbors in need is our mission statement. But if we don't have the financial margin, we can't do it. That's where Piedmont Church comes in as one of many that help to be able to support us. And it's absolutely incredible. So let me tell you, you helped us through MUS Ministries last summer that we've just finished up the 9 weeks of summer lunch. You helped to feed over 535,000 summer lunches. You're helping people to be able to stay in a homeless shelter that was built brand new 3 years ago to be able to accommodate people. I mean, you gave money toward the Love Does to be able to help produce all of those sandwiches and those meals that we give to people. And you fed over 1,400 teachers in the month of May, 1,400. And I'm watching all of what was going on today. I'm seeing how we're represented at all the schools, especially during football season. My goodness, Piedmont Church is everywhere. Piedmont Church is not in that building over there on Sunday morning. Piedmont Church is out everywhere in this community. And I want you to know, with the things that we're doing, man, we've been doing ministries to football teams. Thankful that Isaac Hammond, our student pastor, is serving as the chaplain at Sprayberry High School. I'm thankful for all the different things that we're doing in the feeder programs, and Christina Bridges has helped us with the cheerleading programs, and we're invested in our community. So Piedmont's not just something you come and experience on Sunday morning. It's something that's going on all week long, because church is not something that you drive to. Church is something that you're doing all week. And it just so happens that you can help us to be able to do that by becoming a part of this church, by supporting this church, by helping people turn from hurt to hope. Because we know that we live in a world full of hurting people. They're fighting silent battles, so many of them. There are hidden wounds, there's broken dreams. But I want you to know that the church is absolutely still God's delivery system for hope. It's not perfect. Piedmont Church is not perfect. The church in general is not perfect. But let me tell you what, it is powerful because it's rooted in Jesus Christ. And again, one of those core values of Piedmont Church is people matter to us because people matter to God. And we go out in this community and do what we do, and we call it ministry with no strings attached. And yes, we want to be the first call in this community if there's a call for help. And I always remind young pastors, the day you begin to live for the benefit of the insiders rather than outsiders is the day that your church is going to die. Because if you just reach in, you die. But if you reach out, you live. And anything that lives gives. So I want to encourage you to be a part of what's going on. We are dealers in hope at Piedmont Church. And I want you to be a hope giver with me. I want you to make this church your home. And I want you to help gather here and to be able to make a difference and to be able to help lift people up. I mean, I want you to do that. And maybe today you're sitting there and you're going, you know what, I'm hurting so bad today. I'm so discouraged today. I'm so disillusioned. Well, this message is for you. you don't have to pretend to be okay, because Jesus sees you and He loves you, and this church is here for you. And, if you're one of those people who've been healed, then I want you to be a part of this church and help to bring healing to other people. But sometimes coming in and loving the people in the church and loving the type of ministry that we do, that can help to lift your spirit like nothing else. So I don't want you to just love this church in theory. As we've gone through this series, I love the church. I want you to love it in action by getting in here and making a difference. And again, for those of you that are watching and you're sitting there and you're going, well, man, if you knew what my life was like, you wouldn't want me in the life of your church. As my buddy Steve Sjogren, a mentor to me, said to me, Ike, if you will take the people in your church that no other church wants, then God's going to give you the people in your church that every church would die to have. And I believe that really is Piedmont Church. It is a spiritual place for us to be able to gather God's family in this home. And I want our home to be filled with love. We exist to show God's love in such a way that people will exchange ordinary living for an extraordinary life through the transforming power of Jesus Christ. Make this church your home and come and invest your life in it. And as you serve out God's purpose and you do it through the ministries here at Piedmont Church, it will make all the difference in the world in your life. I am honored to be called your pastor. I'm looking forward to being called your pastor for many of you that are going to make the decision to join this church. God bless you. Have a wonderful Labor Day weekend.